Hey everyone, how's it going today? Hearthstone's final expansion of the year, Kobolds and Catacombs, themed after a D&D style adventure, comes out tomorrow, and I'm really excited about it. So I thought that I would just talk about some cards. This isn't going to be a full card review. I have no interest in going card by card and giving them ratings and trying to predict how good they'll be. But there's a few that really catch my interest and that I think are cool or noteworthy. I just want to talk about them because I can't play with them yet. So first we got King Togwaggle. There's an almost 0% chance of this being good, but man, I love how ridiculous and out there the design of it is. Like, what I envision is milling an opponent and then jamming this down so that they burn the ransom off and they can't switch back and they're stuck with whatever deck that you've foisted upon them. It's just gonna be super fun to pull off on those rare occasions where you actually get to do something meaningful with it. Kind of similar to the next card, which is Brynne, the First Disciple. Again, I don't think this is necessarily going to be viable or good or whatever, but who cares? But man, I can't wait to build a deck entirely around her just for the fun of it. So she's a 6-mana 3/6. On death, you get the first Seal, which is a 5-mana spell that summons a 2/2 demon and gives you the second Seal. The demons for each Seal keep getting stronger and stronger, and there are 5 seals, each costing 5 mana. After you cast the final seal, you get your 6/6, and you also get this in your hand, Azari the Devourer, who is a 10 mana 10/10, who is this battle cry. Destroy your opponent's deck. So you perform this elaborate, long ritual, and then you get to blow your opponent's whole deck up. That's so sick! Literally, the first deck that I'm building is gonna be some stupid Brynne control warlock with, like, I'm thinking like Blood Bloom and maybe Cho'Gall to accelerate how fast you can pump the seals out, and then lots of stall and heal, and like maybe the new 1 mana destroy a friendly minion heal 8 spell. If I can even land Azari once, I will be so psyched. Again, I don't think it's gonna be a good card, but it's such a fun one. So after that, we have all the spell stones that got added. In general, I think I'm just mentioning these because I think their design is pretty cool. How they work is each class gets a different spell stone, which are just normal spells, but they each have a condition that if you meet, they become upgraded versions of that spell for the same cost. And there are different effects and conditions for each class. Like Hunter's base level spellstone is a 5-mana summon 2 3/3 wolves. If you play a secret, it upgrades to summon 3 3/3 wolves for 5. And the final level after you play another secret is 5 mana, play or summon 4 3/3 wolves, which is not bad at all. That's a pretty good value proposition. I think some of the spellstone effects are hit or miss. Like, I'm super glad the Warlock one upgrades based on self-damage instead of discard, but the Mage one is based around playing elementals to get random spells, and there's so much more random spell generation in this expansion, which is by far the worst thing that this expansion's doing. I think, just as an aside, is further pushing this random spell generation identity for Mage. I did the Tiny Voices episode about randomness in Hearthstone, and I understand there's good and bad RNG, but random mage spells are almost universally bad, I think, for the health of the game. And they got Scroll of Wonders this expansion, they got Shifting Scroll, the Spellstone is based entirely around that mechanic, Leyline Manipulator, and it's terrible. But the general idea, to go back to this, the general idea of conditionally upgrading cards is just, I think it's neat. I think a lot of thought goes into that. It promotes an element of decision making. Like, do I try to extract value now when it's not quite as efficient, but I might really need this right now? Can I afford to wait a little bit longer? and get the most I can out of this. It encourages some more deck building synergies. Like, I think it's a cool design for a card. And there's some other stuff this expansion that promotes some more interesting decision making that I also quite like. And that's more cards that affect specific positions on the board, so that you have to pay attention to not only what you're placing and when, but also where you're slamming minions down. There's an element of that already, like some cards always spawn in certain positions on the board, like Patches always comes in from the right side. Sometimes you have to pay attention to that. Some effects only target adjacent minions, like Flame Tongue Totem, Defender of Argus, stuff like that. Betrayal causes a minion to do its damage to adjacent minions. I don't think there's enough yet to make board positioning and the board state part of long-term decision-making for the most part. Like, you don't have to pay too much attention to that stuff yet, but Kobolds and Catacombs is adding even more stuff that affects specific positions on the board, like Crushing Walls for Hunter, 7 mana, destroy the left and rightmost enemy minions. I love this card. Specifically, I love the idea behind this card. There are a few similar style effects in Kobolds, and I want to see more of it. I want to see more of that. Anything that makes decision-making more complex and thus leads to the individual skill ceiling raising up is fine with me. Ixlid Fungal Lord. New Druid Legendary. After you play a minion, summon a copy of it. I see so much potential in this card to get out of hand. And it can represent some like really big tempo swings, which is something I love. I just enjoy that effect. It makes removing key minions harder because you'll have redundancy, basically. This one just really piques my interest. And another Druid card for the expansion, Branching Paths, is just straight up really well designed. Exactly because it's so flexible, and there's no randomness to it. You know the effects, you know exactly what choices you're going to get each time, but it's still an exercise in decision making, and it allows for a lot of flexibility. It's the same reason that I liked Adapt as a keyword. You get flexibility out of it to choose based on what you need at the moment, or you can choose something more long term. You can choose a couple of effects that will work well down the line. And the other thing about it is that it fits with the theme of the expansion being all dungeon exploration, which is awesome. And it fits with Druid class identities, so this is just a lovely little card. Next we have Flanking Strike, which isn't a super out there or super interesting card, but I really just like solid cards like this that represent tempo swings. As I said before, things that help you either regain control or catch up. This is that. It's a tempo swing card. Just a really solid one. Hoarding Dragon here is slightly overstated. It's a slightly overstated 4-drop with a huge downside. But as a thematic thing, I like this a lot. I think the card itself isn't overstated enough for the insane death rattle, but it's a really reasonable tempo card, I guess. But that's not, again, we're not doing a card review. Why do I like this? This expansion has a fun theme and tons of really great cards that stick to that theme. Like I mentioned before with Branching Paths, it's all like D&D based, so you find the dragon and his hoard of treasure and you slay it and you get a bunch of coins. Cool, it's nice theming. Kobold Monk. Not only do I kind of love the art for this, which is a recurring thing with this expansion, I think the art is so terrific in this one. But what kind of makes me like this card is sheer spite. The spite of thinking, man, I could run this, I could give it stealth or untargetable by spells or hero powers, and I could just laugh as Exodia Mage has no win condition. That's the least viable deck building strategy anyone has ever conceived of. And I'm not gonna burn multiple slots on my deck to actually do that and just to spite Exodia Mage, though I will tech in Eater of Secrets all the time. But the thought does make me laugh. Otherwise, I don't think this card is amazing. It seems like they actually had maybe Anti-Rozakis Priest in mind with this card, but no, they'll just paint it or ping it down. Oh, but speaking of Anti-Rozakis tech, the Darkness. Oh, the Darkness, how I love this card. So Dormant, which appears in its text, Dormant is like how Sherazin the Corpse Flower is when it's killed, or the Nether Portal from the Warlock quest. It can't be removed, it can't be interacted with. It essentially acts as a permanent spot on the board until the minion itself, the Darkness, the 2020, becomes active. And it only becomes a usable 2020 when your opponent draws all 3 of the candles that the Darkness shovels into their deck. I think it is exceptionally rare that this will actually get to attack as a 2020 because it's going to get removed the moment that it becomes active. But I don't think that's the point. It shuts down Highlander. For 4 mana, that's not bad. And this is a neutral legendary, so everybody has access to this. I envision this, if it gets run at all, I envision this being run as basically a tech card against Highlander. Plus, to be fair, it does demand hard removal, which means that's one less bit of removal, say for your other heavy hitters or your really impactful cards. But again, I think this is amazing just because it's disruptive. And one of my favorite cards ever is Beneath the Grounds. Another one is Dirty Rat. These are cards that, again, I would call disruptive. They broadly, I would guess, I guess they would fit into the category of tech cards, but they have these potent, unique effects that make them feel a lot more interesting than the usual tech cards. Like Hungry Crab is just kill a Murloc, gain stats. That's a tech card, but it isn't super disruptive to an entire game plan. It's a tempo swing, and it's for a very specific purpose within the meta, so it's a tech choice, but it doesn't completely mess with the enemy's game plan. Beneath the Grounds was a card that would entirely ruin Highlander's whole game plan. You can't Reno Jackson, you can't Raza, you can't Kazakis. Dirty Rat, when used smartly, is a combo destroyer. It's not a 2-drop. It's not, I mean, it's technically a 2-drop, but you don't run it out as a 2-drop. It's not something you play as a vanilla 2/6 taunt on turn 2. You play it at a specific point in the game when you have a read that someone might have a combo piece. You play it when you can combo it with hard removal and completely disrupt their game plan if they're a combo-based deck. You know, Dirty Rat Twisting Nether, Dirty Rat Brawl, Dirty Rat any kind of single target removal. And then there's the next level of play after that, which is leaving something in your hand that hopefully the Dirty Rat pulls instead of your combo pieces. I've seen people leave Doomsayers that might have a small impact on the immediate board state, but I've seen people leave Doomsayers in their hand just so the Dirty Rat will have an extra target to hopefully not grab one of their combo pieces. And that promotes a really cool kind of play. Disruption and anti-disruption. Imagine if Minionless Hunter became an actual thing, an actual archetype that was prominent in the meta and people started running Weasel Tunnelers. I just love disruptive cards. This is the reason why I think something like Curse of Ratham was awesome. I teched that into a bunch of decks just because it's a freeze mage game plan annihilator. You don't ever have to worry about chains of ice blocks ever again if you have Curse of Ratham. Unfortunately, that rotated out along with Beneath the Grounds and Dirty Rats going early next year, which all of that bums me out. But yeah, I think the Darkness is a tech card that actually just seems like it could be solid. It's Beneath the Grounds with a less immediate effect that demands hard removal. But for Rozakis, it's just straight up disruptive. It completely fucks up that whole game plan. Plus, it makes me want to play Mill Rogue. Next, we have Explosive Rune. I like this one for a bunch of reasons, partially because there's nothing else like this in Hearthstone. In Magic the Gathering, you have a keyword called Trample, and that's basically what this card does, but Hearthstone has no actual trample keyword. This is the only one like it in the game. And second, this secret forces your opponent to make a difficult decision. I don't know what secret this mage just played. It could be Potion of Polymorph, it could be Mirror Entity, it could be Explosive Rune. If I play a big minion and it's one of the first two, it gets sheeped or my opponent gets their own copy of a dangerous thing. But if it's Explosive Rune, at least I don't take that much face damage if I run this big minion out. If I play a little guy to trip sheep or Mirror Entity, that makes the impact of those secrets smaller. But if I play like a 1/1 into Explosive Rune, I lose that 1/1 and take 5 damage to face. It's a decision-making and risk management card. Cave Hydra. Let me tell you about how beautiful this card is. This might be my favorite card of the expansion because it's just straight up solid as a 3-drop, and it's such an excellent design for control or mid-range minions, especially if you curve into Houndmaster or throw like Toxic Arrow on it. It basically cleaves, and it's such a strong, potent, interestingly designed removal minion. And again, it's playing into the position of minions on the board, that design, where you have to be attentive to it. You can somewhat limit the impact of this thing based on how you position your minions. What a beautiful, amazing, cool card. That also looks to be like super viable. That's just a good card. Shrieking Shroom. I don't actually care about throwing this in any decks. I don't think its design is all that great. And it doesn't look that good. But look at that art. It's fucking delightful. I love this thing. I love this art. Speaking of art, you know what I love? I love mimics. I just wish this card was actually good because I would include it in all of my decks because I love fucking mimics, and that's a cool mimic, and this is, I don't think it's gonna be a super good card, but oh well. Bladed Gauntlet. It's a really creative weapon with a lot of potential utility, so yeah, I'm intrigued by it. Void Ripper. I am gonna do disgusting things with this card, and it's a neutral. I can think of uses for this in so many different classes and so many different deck archetypes. Priests have issues removing 4-attack minions, and there are very few like 4/4s that I can think of that priests would generally struggle with, or that would go into decks. So you flip their attack and health, and suddenly the target is more easily removable. Druids can get some pretty nuts things going with the 1/6 with taunt that gets bigger every time you play another dude, or like with Spreading Plague against a wide board that they cannot easily clear off on their turn. Like if they can't clear all the Spreading Plague spiders off on their next turn, that leaves you the potential to flip them, to flip the 1/5s into 5/1s, and you could maybe make a push for lethal with that. You could do some nasty stuff. Warlocks got a 3/9 with taunt. Tar Creepers are on your own turn 1/5s. Tar Lords are, what are they, 3 or 4 11s? There are a lot of minions with huge health pools and low attacks that you can flip for huge damage. Same with like the new 4/12 dragon, Ysera, which is 4/12. If you just want to suddenly hit the gas and push for lethal, you can just flip that switch just like that. Alternatively, you can make really high health, low attack taunts easier to clear too. Or you can set up situations where you get better value trades by flipping things, so your own minions that you're trying to value trade with have higher health pools. I can just see so much utility going on in this design. I think it's going to be a really nifty card. I loved Bran before he rotated out, so yeah, Murmuring Elemental seems pretty dope. Lots of uses I can foresee for this one, including getting just like a simple 8-mana Pyroblast with Blazecaller. Or doing some, wait, that's 8 mana, right? 2 for the Elemental, Blazecaller 6? Yeah. Or doing some shenanigans with Grumble and the mana cost reduction elementals. I think Flame something Harbinger? I don't know. Or like You know the Doppelgangster Evolve combo? Well, now you can Murmuring Elemental Doppelgangster, get a 2-drop and 6 5-drops and evolve 7 minions instead of 3. Oh, and speaking of Grumble, yeah, look at that. Somebody already figured out some super complicated, like, infinite card OTK with Grumble and Blaze Callers and the cost reduction. Fireplume Harbingers, there we go. Unless that's the one that gives you the Death Rattle, that gives you 2 Flame Elementals. I think it's Fireplume Harbinger that I'm thinking of. Anyway, somebody figured out, like, a theory for a crazy complicated OTK using Grumble. And that alone, like, gives me a lot of hope for that card. And that was before Murmuring Elemental was revealed. Like, I think there's a lot of potential there, just for cool plays. And then Shaman's also got Unstable Evolution in this expansion, which is cool because it's, again, a unique effect, a card that is repeatable. And I dig that design. Plus, it lets you mulligan bad evolves. And the only downside is that there's going to be a lot more bad evolves to mulligan now because there are so many super low statted minions with really good battle cries or card text this expansion. Like, there's a new 1/1 Paladin legendary that's a 7-drop, I think, and her battle cry is she gets every buff that the Paladin cast on its other minions this game. But if you evolve a 6-drop into that 1/1, you just feel bad. Or maybe or maybe you grumble it. Maybe you grumble it and get and then just hit the battle cry and jam it down, and then you feel great. Oh, I wonder, does Bloodlust apply to it? I don't know. There's not that many buffs. It's still gonna be bad if you get that, but whatever. Oh, this next one. So many things. First off, it is adorable. This is my favorite card art. He's so cute. Look at his big sparkling puppy dog eyes, and they're big and wide and full of wonder, and how he accidentally set the stack of books on fire behind him with a candle on his head because he's looking up at the other ones in awe. It's so cute. It's so cute. Now, also, this card's ridiculous. It's not even a super interesting design, card text-wise, but man, this might be one of the better 1-drops ever printed. It's a 1-mana life tap that's attached to a 2/1 body? Dope. Carnivorous Cube here is a trifecta. It's got great art, it's themed really appropriate for the expansion, and it's super interesting design-wise. And it favors like these long-term value propositions, and can probably set up some really cool plays as well. Next, we're getting down to the last couple here. Kingsbane is one of the first rogue weapons I've seen in ages that genuinely really interests me. So much so that I kind of want to try to build an entire deck around this. That I can't tell if it would be super viable, but it at least encourages me creatively enough to try to build something for it. There's something that's never been seen before, which is its infinite value, and it retains any enchantments cast on it when you re-equip it, so that's all really cool. And last but not least is the new Priest Legendary Dragon Temporis. Until now, the Mage Quest has been the only card which lets you mess with the turn economy. This one lets you take an extra turn, but only after the opponent does. I don't think it's good per se, but I also don't think it's as bad as some people have evaluated it to be. I think it's interesting, again, because it's such a hard decision that you have to make as to when you want to play it. If you can control the matchup well enough, it might not be that detrimental to give your opponent an extra turn. Like, if you are reasonably confident that they don't have a 2-turn lethal, or some kind of combo that they can pull off with those 2 turns, it's not that bad to run this out. And even better, it's not unreasonable to think that you might have some kind of combo of your own that can be accomplished thanks to this. Some kind of Velen combo, or an enabler for an inner fire setup. Just something different. I like this. I think this is a fascinating card. Maybe not good. Maybe it is. Maybe it will actually be good. But it's definitely interesting. And there's plenty of cards that I could have just looked at and gone, oh, this is going to be good, this is clearly bad, this one is clearly going to be amazing, like the 4-drop Priest Dragon, Duskbreaker, I think. But I'm not so much interested in trying to predict how the meta is going to shake out and how valuable or how good it will be to have and run certain cards or deck archetypes. But I just wanted to talk a bit about some of the cards I found really interesting or cool in some way from the upcoming expansion. I think there are a bunch of Kobolds cards that get me excited about building a deck around them. Like this expansion has me really excited to experiment again, and that's one of my favorite parts about Hearthstone is deck building and discovering new possibilities. And I get this impression that there are a lot of possibilities out there in this one. Like, I'm curious to just see how these things work out and what kind of interactions you can get going. And like, a bunch of these ideas that I have for decks aren't going to net me tons of wins, but they look really fun to try. And I'll be trying them as early as tomorrow, from when this video goes live at least. I think in the afternoon, starting at 12 p.m. EST, is when I'm going to stream. I'm going to be doing some unpacking, some deck building, and some laddering, and also dungeon runs. Oh, I'm so excited about the dungeon runs. They look awesome. Adding a roguelike element to Hearthstone, and it's usually pretty creative single-player stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited about this expansion. Anyway, that's going to do it for now. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take it easy. Have a good one.